oh, you're watching it for the 45th time. I'm watching for the 700th time.
Right. I'm like that with the Blues Brothers.
Okay, great. Yeah, great movie.
That's a musical.
It is. Oh, absolutely.
It's and people don't see it as musical.
Absolutely.
It's a musical.
It's a very good one too.
It's a very good musical. And same thing, it's like, because I've had that used to lock me down when didn't want me to go out or something. I'll go by the TV and the Blues Brothers will be sitting there and or playing, and I'll go, I'll just watch a couple minutes.
I do that. It's edited. It's with commercials, but I'll watch the next commercial break. And next thing you know, 30 minutes later, I'm like, I was supposed to be somewhere in 5 minutes. Takes you 15 minutes to get there. Quick text, I'll be there in 30 minutes, and then I get through the next commercial break, and then I'll leave. Yeah.
How do you feel about the sequels?
To me, it goes 1, 3, 2, 4, 5 in terms of the best ones. The first one is, of course, the best. The third one, which takes place in New York City with Samuel L. Jackson, is Die Hard with a Vengeance, is my second favorite. It was the same director as the first one. I think that was part of it. And the plot lines there was an arc in between the two. The second one was okay, but it was the typical sequel, and let's do the exact same thing. Let's just change the setting and do the same.
That was
stunts.
the one with John Amos as the rogue general.
Correct. It took place at Dulles Airport. So they ignored the fact that he was a New York cop who then moved to L.A. and now was going to D.C. to visit with his in-laws, and his wife was flying in on a different plane. Ignore some of the plot holes in that. The fourth one was surprisingly good. That was the cyber terrorism one with his Justin Long, and Timothy Olyphant was the villain. And that was interesting because he's not a tech guy, and I'm like, how is he going to fight a cyber criminal when he doesn't use a cell phone? They made it work.
I loved when they took out the helicopter with the Crown Vic.
Yeah, it was good.
Because that wasn't CGI. That's why it was so good.
That was there was a lot of great stunts, a lot of which you're like, okay, physics tells me that's probably not going to happen, but it's still cool. It's still really cool.
Right.
And then the fifth one was disappointing, but I knew it was going to be disappointing going into it because I'm like, why are you still making these movies?
I did not know there was a fifth one.
There is. It takes place in Russia, and it was about 3 or 4 years ago. It's a good day to die hard, and it was not a good day, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I fell off the train at 4 then.
It must be about when you make a fifth sequel. Rocky V, also terrible. You know, the first 4 Rockies, good. Balboa and the Creed movies, phenomenal. Rocky V, I pretend that didn't happen.
You got to do the Spielberg thing in 3.
Yeah, just trilogies. Yeah,
just trilogies.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and
although Rocky IV is my second favorite Rocky, so that was the Drago, the Russian one. That was, I mean,
wait, what was Rocky V?
Rocky V was when he loses everything and moves back to Philly and trains Tommy Gunn, which was the up and coming boxer. It was not good. It was not good. Rocky IV. People say to me when I'm playing Quizzo at a bar, they say, you know, who ended the Cold War, and I'm like, Rocky Balboa. That's obviously what happened. You know, Rocky beats Drago, and then gets Mikhail Gorbachev to stand up and applaud his speech, and 7 years later, the end of the Cold War.
Yeah.
So.
He can take credit as much as anyone.
That's true.
When you look at it in history, so you don't just dabble in it. You've got your diehards ordered, and
absolutely, I got my diehards ordered, got my Rockies ordered, and just I like good movies. I like a lot of comedies. Die Hard's my favorite action movie, and Goodfellas is my favorite movie of all time. But I do like good comedies. Just good stupid laugh out loud.
You like Mel Brooks?
I do like Mel Brooks. I'm not as well versed. I've seen Blazing Saddles. I've seen some other movies, but I've never. It's not my genre. My genre is more generic fraternity humor. A lot of those frat pack movies with Vince Vaughn and Will Ferrell and those guys. Old school and Hangover, that kind of stuff is always entertained me.
Yeah, but you hit an age where you can just see enough of Will Ferrell's stomach, and it's like,
or other parts of his body, right, depending on what movie it is.
I'm blacking out the whole other part that you're talking about, but yeah. And shock humor is my favorite anymore because you see it once and it's funny and it's shocking, and then you can't. I like movies you can watch over and over again that it still don't lose its luster or its meaning. Well, modern one that's like that I asked about Mel Brooks because they compared it to Blazing Saddles, and I hate when they take something and compare it to a classic and say, oh, this is as funny as that, because classics, they have to marinate. They take time. You can't make an instant classic.
is Million Ways to Die in the Old West. I thought that was pretty funny, and I can watch that over and over again.
And the only reason to compare them to is because they take place in the West.
Yeah.
That's where the correlation ends,
Right.
basically. Yeah. No, the Seth MacFarlane is one of my favorite. My favorite TV show of all time, hands down, bar none, is The Simpsons. I have watched every episode. I still watch every episode, as bad as they may be. I watch them every week. For 29 seasons, I've been watching that show. I will never stop watching that show. But Family Guy and Seth MacFarlane, his humor is right up my alley.
Has the Simpsons been on long enough to have covered everything? Because it seems like it has.
It has been on long enough to cover everything, to the point where every now and then you go, I feel like I saw that, and you go through a book or something like that, and you realize, oh, they kind of did that episode like 14 years ago, but you kind of forgot because it was 14 years ago, and I don't remember anything from TV 14 years ago that sticks to my head long enough to remember that it's been done.
So Simpsons is almost covering 3 generations of people. Almost.
Simpsons started out when I was on the Tracy Ullman Show when I was 7. The first episode was a Christmas special when I was 9. And I'll be 38 next month, and they're still going strong. My nephews, who are now, oldest is in college, and the youngest will be a senior in high school next year, they grew up watching it with me, which is ironic because when it first came out, it was, the end of family values as we knew it. And now all of a sudden, compared to all the other shows on TV, The Simpsons is pretty tame. My nephews were allowed to watch that growing up. And now they're into college and the show's still on TV, and I'm sure, I don't know how many more years it's got. It's gotten much more satirical and a much more, making fun of pop culture than it did in years past, but it still has some relevance, I think.
It's when I've seen it, it's been weaker, but still good, better than anything else that's been on for that long could be.
Sure, and being animated obviously allows them to. The characters don't age, so
right.
Technically,
but the writers do.
The writers do. Well, the writers come and go, and they change. But technically, Bart's my age, so Bart would be 38 years old. Homer would be in his 60s by now. Grandpa would be 140 or something. I don't know. So you extrapolate all that. But because they're suspended in time, even though the technology around them with the cell phones and that computers and the internet have changed the storylines, they're still kind of suspended in time.
It's funny because when you said they've been on 29 years ago, you note the passage of time, and one thing that's hit me recently is that we're coming up on in the next year or so, a generation of people who graduate high school. They've never lived in a world before 9/11.
Yeah.
And it's like you start thinking how much time has passed. 30 years, coming up on 30 years of The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was interesting. I working at the high school in 2007, the Phillies made back to the playoffs for the first time. They won the division. They'd come back and beat the Mets. And one of my kids walked in. I guess he was a sophomore at the time. He's like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. And I said, well, the Phillies were in the World Series in '93. What are you talking about? Yeah, but I was 1. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was in 8th grade when that happened. And that was when I first started realizing I was aging out of things because somebody couldn't remember something I remembered from 8th grade.
Does working in high school make you feel younger or older on average? Because it could go either way.
For a while, it made me feel young. Now it doesn't.
For a while,
some of my students who have come through, who I've developed lifelong friendships with, including one I was in his wedding many years later, who I'm still good friends with. Now they are married with children. So I'm feeling older as time goes on, and again, you hit a certain age, you become more of a curmudgeon. So I think it's making me feel older now, but for a while it made me feel young and active. I think probably because I was young and active.
Right. And you just, it's tough not to, I was yelling at kids the other day. They were in the street and they were playing in the street and I, and as an adult, you do the same thing adults did to you. You make up the safety excuse.
Right.
Now, I don't want you kids to get hurt out there. You got to be careful. And there was a legitimate safety concern. But really, if they were quiet doing dangerous things, I never would have noticed.
Yeah, no, that's true. I find what makes you feel older is when I make references to something and the kids look at me like case in point, I had 2 freshman students who announced a baseball game a few weeks ago. I'm doing the camera and they were doing the announcing, and
as we're leaving, one of their dads comes. I was like, "So how'd he do?" And I was like, "Oh, they did pretty good." I said, they work well together. I said, they're no Harry and Whitey." And Dad laughed, and I turned to them. I'm like, "You have no idea who Harry and Whitey are," and they're like, "Nope." I said, "All right then." So
you can't make you gotta. The thing is, part of getting older, because you're a little younger than I am, is that you're stuck in this void where your references are too old for a lot of your audience, and when you try and make current references, they're just horrible.
Oh, no doubt.
It's like, I know a guy who says, "So, you like Mumford and Sons?" That's his go-to.
And it's funny because you said that, and I'm hearing Sanford and Son.
Right.
So it's the number of times I have to Google something during what is, I had to Google what's a dab, and then okay, now I know what that is. Okay, Googling different sayings or whatever. I'm like, I don't know what that means, and I don't know if it's a bad thing or not. I don't want to say it in a school setting if it's inappropriate, so I have to research what it is before I try to use that as a reference.
Yeah, and that's when pop culture distances itself, and you have to realize as you're getting older that part of the reason everything looks different and everything and angers you because it's confusing is because it's not marketed to you anymore. They're not marketing it the same way. That's why we don't understand these commercials that go, "Is this for pants, a car, cologne, or some kind of pain medicine?" I do not know what this commercial's for.
I was in that 18 to 34 demo for a very long time, and now I'm not, and I understand that, and I find but times change, and you find things that remind you of it's fascinating now that modern TV is basically just not rebooting shows with new cast. They're literally just bringing the old cast back and doing the exact same show from 20 years ago.
Some of it's good, some of it's not. They're remaking Magnum PI.
But that's an all new cast. The new Roseanne is the exact same cast, and they picked up where they left off. I find I loved that show when I was a kid, and I enjoy it now because it's at least the characters have evolved, and there's depth there, whereas some shows they've rebooted that are just, it's the exact same show with the exact same storylines and the same jokes from 10 years ago. And I'm like,
but I'd rather them not change it around, use the same name, just make a new show.
Right.
Make a new show about a detective in Hawaii and have people say it's like Magnum.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's no need to, and there's no need to change genders of characters and all that kind of stuff. Just make a new show.
Because right on the preview, they shot up the Ferrari, and it just bothered me.
I saw that too, and I was like, well, now what?
Now what?
What's the iconic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when they remade the, I don't know, I'm going to reveal that huge A-Team fan. I know it was cheesy, but it was my generation's cheesy.
It's a good show.
But when they remade the movie, I wanted to see what happened to the van. Is the van going to be in it, or is it going to be, is it going to be like a Prius van or something, or what are they going to do to make it horrible? And they had the van there, and it wasn't to people that are true A-Team aficionados. It was not an exact replica. It was slightly different. The gunmetal color was off, the rims were off, and the running boards, and the exhaust.
And you noticed all of that?
I did, like you do on Die Hard. And but when they dropped the air conditioner on and pancaked it, I just died. But I was glad they took it out in the beginning and they got it through with. But it's when they're retooling stuff, sometimes it's like this new Magnum is made by the people that do Fast and Furious, and you can tell because everything is sliding sideways down the road, shooting at somebody.
Right. Well, the only thing that concerns me about the remaking of shows and are they really trying to admit to the world the only people left watching network television are the people who remember these shows from back then, and we're just going to ride them until they don't watch TV anymore? Because, obviously, so many younger generations are getting their shows on Netflix or on Amazon Prime or other entertainment venues or on YouTube, and they're not necessarily consuming TV the same way you or I do.
I didn't even think about that possibility. Did you watch the recent Ash versus Evil Dead? Have you seen any of that?
I have not, no.
They did a reboot based on the trilogy that was done by Sam and Ted Raimi years ago, and it was a cult classic, and they brought it back. But what's nice was they brought him back at the exact age, still being an idiot, but a 50-year-old idiot, and nothing's changed other than he's gotten older. He's not any smarter. And and it was really good as far as lesson in aging. And then you have the reverse of that when they take a show